I'd like to thank, I'm going to send them handwritten notes in ink. I'm not going to explain much because there's a lot to go over. I have two versions. The short version in case I stutter, which I occasionally do. It comes upon me, and then I do this. I let out a half breath and then have a slowed second syllable. Some people think I'm blessing them. What to explain? Not much. Mike Reardon, this is campaign season, so I thought I'd go back to the only thing I've ever written about a political campaign, but there's more to come. I've actually worked on several, and this is actually worse than any that I've worked on. Mike Reardon is a hero. He's running for Congress. He was a lawyer in D.C., but got fed up. He moved to Charlottesville, where he's an okay trial lawyer. His wife, Joss, is in love with Bonnie One, a woman now. She's Bonnie One, to tell her apart from Bonnie Two, who's a campaign worker for Mike. They have two daughters, Edith, 11, Nora, 10. Fiona is another campaign worker, and she's very cute. I hope we have time to get to her. Why is Mike running against Congressman Fenton, a 6-time Republican incumbent? Well, the Democratic committee needed a futile gesture. Mike's father was a congressman, and his father-in-law, whom he deeply loved, worked in Washington. He was an admiral. He loves his mother-in-law very much. She loves him. That's all you need to know. She's referred to as Grandma. All right. Anything else that comes up, Jill, just catch up with it. The first part's really pretty boring. Well, I don't know where to start. The poultry worker said, well, yes. Mike said, well, that's great. So if you leave your name and number with the operator, we can get together on this. Mike's new campaign manager, Jerry Medina, had been writhing around in the booth. Now he leaned forward and spoke through his microphone into the studio. Break, 60 seconds. Look, Mikey, stick with the cards. Don't overwhelm the caller, okay? Not too loud, not too long. Your voice levels are way up, then they're way down. Even. It's good. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. 30 seconds. Don't get me wrong, Mike. I don't mean you're stupid. I mean slow. What else? Oh, yeah, breathing. Breathe. Jerry was like an overzealous golf pro, telling him 20 things that were wrong with his swing and then saying, relax. The next caller was another woman. She said, that was Psalms 5:15, young man, the psalm you just quoted. Mike said, thank you. You must have an amazing memory. I used my concordance. Well, good for you. I wish more people had one next to the Bible. But how does it happen, she said, that you're quoting the King James Version? I read in the papers that you're a Roman Catholic. Yes, ma'am, but when I was a boy, I sang in a choir, and our choir master was friends with an Episcopal choir master. So once in a while, the Episcopalian had his choir boys come over to us, and then we'd go over and rehearse with them. So I got both versions. Lumen ad revelationem gentium comes out, Jerry mouths from the booth. No Latin, for Christ's sake. A light to lighten the Gentiles, and nunc dimittis servum tuum comes out, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. So all of us, Protestants and Catholics, we were singing the same song. But the woman said, then why can't we have that in our schools? Mike made his standard blocking move. You mean in our public schools, ma'am, in our state schools? Yes, I do. Instead of some of those things they teach about health. You know I don't mean health, I mean about things. I think I know what you mean. I've been concerned how they teach. I think we can refer to it as reproduction without offending. I've been very concerned about this concern of yours. I was concerned with the materials my daughters brought home, teaching about human reproduction without teaching about love. I hope you mean divine love. How can they teach anything at all without teaching God's plan? That is a hard question. Mike looked up at the booth. Jerry gave the wind-up sign. Mike said, that is the hardest question of all, ma'am, and I can't give you the one answer that would completely satisfy all the students and all the parents of students, and that's because so many of them have different versions of God's plan. In our private schools and in our Sunday schools and in our Bible classes, we can tell the kids what we understand to be God's plan. And some of us may be right. Some of us may be like Job, who could say, I know that my Redeemer liveth, and I shall see him. The woman said, on the latter day upon the earth. Yes, but some of us are likely to fall into being Job's comforters, who thought they had God's plan all laid out for them like a contract. They weren't bad guys. You remember how at first they sat with Job in silence for 3 days, but then they started pushing him around, and they were a little too sure of what they knew about God. And you remember what happened next? When God spoke from the whirlwind, it was to rebuke them for not having said the right thing. You do remember that part, ma'am? I do. For ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as hath my servant Job. And what the right thing is this, Mike said. Job felt the mystery of God. He felt the unknowableness of God. So one of the reasons we can't order up God's plan in state school is that we would risk being Job's comforters. We risk being too cut and dried, too certain. We can't teach about God's plan the way we teach math or science. We can hope that the order of science might lead students to the mystery of where all that order comes from. But that's too hard a thing to pigeonhole in a state lesson plan. That's the reason we should let the state schools render unto Caesar, and hope that our families and our Sunday schools and keeping the Sabbath, we hope all that will render unto God the things that are God. So one thing I'd like to ask you, ma'am, do you teach Sunday school? It sounds as if you know. She yelled, the devil can quote scripture. Do you hear me? The devil can quote scripture. Disconnect. Jerry Medina pointed his finger at his mouth and smiled, meaning, say something nice. That cuts both ways, ma'am, Mike said. Jerry pushed the corners of his mouth up higher. But Mike said, well, seriously now, I thought we were about to get somewhere. He felt lightheaded. He knew well enough not to argue a witness. You could win the argument and lose the jury. But if you were dealing with a jury, you could stay in touch with them, take a look, see them tense up or frown. You could, here in a studio, he was alone. He was in the middle of nowhere. He stuck to the cards for the next several calls. He felt more enclosed, though, not because of Jerry Medina's little controlling prods and taps. Not because of the small acoustic-tiled room with double-plated glass giving only a view of an even smaller room. He was becoming enclosed in himself, his public skin becoming thicker and harder, an exoskeleton. Welfare, check flashcard, put in perspective, 1% of budget, welfare Cadillac, an exaggeration, corporate bailouts vastly greater. Yes, should include job training, incentives to work, a phrase from an old speech his father gave during the Depression. We must save our people from the dry rot of dole. Cut the tax and capital gains? Nothing so-so about that. He stole a phrase from an FDR speech. Why should the economic royalists pay a lower tax on their unearned income than the rest of us pay on our working wages? The Republicans say it will encourage investment in business growth and the benefits will trickle down. But let me ask this. What are people with extra money going to do with it other than invest? Why do they need encouragement? What else are these rich people going to do? The caller said, well, maybe these investors will move it overseas and then we won't even get the trickle down. Whole companies might just get up and leave. Well, said Mike, if we let that happen, that would be a problem. But you know what? If you or I take ourselves overseas and enlist in a foreign army, you know what happens? We lose our citizenship. Do you or I get a gift for staying here? No, we do not. We are prohibited from allegiance to a foreign power. We don't think of that very often because there are so few of us who would even dream of abandoning our country. We have individual consciences. Corporations do not. They aren't immoral, they're amoral. They're just artificial entities chartered by the state, chartered by us. We give them their artificial citizenship, and we can certainly decide that these artificial citizens should be as patriotic as the rest of us. Oh God, done. He shook his head. He goddamn wrapped himself in the flag. Mike couldn't wait to get out. His shirt was so wet he felt cold in the air-conditioned hallway. He went out onto the sidewalk. The sunlight was odd. He'd expected night. It was the same feeling as coming out of an afternoon movie. Now we get to Edith is speaking now. How fast do we go? Okay. Grandma sent me to summer camp. I had become a too quiet ghost in Grandma's house, shying away from the big cousins, silently but fiercely wanting all of Grandma all the time. For a while, she was sympathetic. She taught me backgammon. She gave me books that she'd loved as a girl, the very book she'd written her name in. I would come into her bedroom along with her breakfast tray and get in bed with her. I would read my book while she read the newspaper. Once in a while, she would stroke my hand or my hair. It was bliss, but I was miserable in a way that bliss could not reach. I knew that she knew, and that made me more desperately quiet and well-behaved. Now there's a plain, everyday phrase that always has a barb in it. Nora was off with Dad. Mom was off to Italy with Bonnie One. Grandma never tried to get me to join Dad and Nora on the campaign trail. But Grandma knew that I was down a well and that she couldn't get me out by herself. So I think you'd be happier. And off we went, distracted at first by a shopping trip to Fredericksburg and then by the terror of being a new girl in the second half of summer camp, of failing at archery, tennis, or horseback riding. My exile wasn't all that far away, the Shenandoah Valley, right at the northwest fringe of the 13th Congressional District. Grandma drove me. The camp director fussed over her and me. Wherever she went, Grandma always knew someone. I was on the Red team because Mom had been a Red when she'd gone here. Mom's name was on the main lodge. It was in the main lodge on a varnished wood plaque listing old campers. Mom had been the under-12 tennis champion, and she'd won the award for campfire spirit of enthusiasm. So I threw myself into it too, from reveille to taps, braiding lanyards for Mom and Dad, whacking the hide off the softball, the tetherball, the tennis ball, churning away on the breaststroke leg of the under-12 relay, 5 points for the Red team. Florida oranges, California cactus, we use the blue team just for practice. Paddling in the under-12 single canoe event a quarter mile across the pond, leaning into it, keeping on course with a J-stroke flick, as furious and grim as Dad paddled. 5 more points for the Red team. Go back to the woods. You haven't got the goods. You haven't got the rhythm. You haven't got the jazz. You haven't got the spirit that the Red team has. So I was Mom, and I was Dad. I was the campfire spirit of making them stay in their places, trying to send them my goodness, paddling my canoe as if it were a Buddhist prayer wheel. During the free period between supper and taps, I walked to the stables and groomed my favorite pony, back to the cabin on wobbly legs. Sundays we had to write home. I wrote Grandma. Every sentence ended with an exclamation point. I love Snickle Fritz. She's a Welsh pony. They're bigger than Shetlands, as big as a real horse. The camp summer season was cleverly plumped up to imitate the real year. Just before I got there, they had a midsummer Halloween. After I got there, they had a summer Thanksgiving. We decorated the dining hall with black construction paper turkeys with orange crepe paper wattles, and we ate a turkey dinner. Then we had a summer Christmas with a counselor dressed up as Santa Claus and the juniors dressed up as elves. I was too old to be an elf, but I wore a red party dress with a string of faux pearls that Grandma sent me. Grandma even remembered the camp's fake Christmas. I think the camp would have had a fake Valentine's Day too, except that the place was a swarm of crushes, juniors and seniors, intermediates and junior counselors and horses, seniors and grown-up counselors. It would have been a certain occasion for tears before bedtime. We campers saw through the fake holidays, but we were still effectively seduced by the special meals, dressing ourselves up, and getting presents. This made the fake holidays inadvertent training for later experiences with boys and men. What was advertent on the part of the camp management, I'm almost sure, was that the fake holidays were divorce therapy. without revealing anything about my own situation, which I couldn't do because of Dad's campaign. I'd found out that 5 of the 12 girls in my cabin had divorced parents. The daughters of older divorces told bragging horror stories about Thanksgivings and Christmases, getting sick on bumpy plane rides to Dad's new house, packing and unpacking and packing again, and wait till you have to be nice to your dad's new girlfriend. What the camp did was to provide a bland simulacrum of family holidays. No big thrills, but no anguish, a methadone program, or maybe a couple of doses of lithium to level out the 2 big hopes and 2 big disappointments that come from having overexcitable parents. The fake holidays, soothing letters from Grandma, and my own striving to be a good camper had stabilized me. So when Dad and Nora showed up, I didn't know what to make of them. They arrived in the campaign van that now had, in addition to the Purple Heart license plate, an American flag painted on the side and a Reardon for Congress glitter bumper sticker. Even if they hadn't brought the van, they were way too pumped up. On Parents' Visiting Day, the camp became slow Sunday lunch at a country club, station wagons, mothers in summer dresses, fathers on their day off, no starch, but looking as if they might have been to church. Dad was not on his day off. He was on a mission. He even looked paramilitary, khaki pants, khaki short-sleeved shirt with shoulder tabs, canvas sand-colored hiking shoes. That was his notion of what to wear to politic at a truck stop diner or a fire department softball game, which in fact was what he'd just been doing. The theme was, of course, Reardon, vigorous, Benton, way too old. And he did look vigorous. His hair was cropped, his beard was trimmed square and short. He was tan. I guessed it was from giving speeches outdoor, but Nora said he used a sun lamp. And he'd been lifting dumbbells. He also went to gyms in Harrisonburg, Stanton, and Culpeper and dropped in to use the weights at fire stations, a 2-for-1 deal, politicking and lifting in one 20-minute visit. Ganny, his law partner, told me later that she'd advised him to do some exercise that would be good for his heart. Dad said to her, "That muscle doesn't show." But the main thing was that he tapped into the energy of his anger, of his hurt feelings, of his craziness. He was using adrenaline. He was using the whole campaign as a drug. Nora was a little bit scared by his manic energy, but she was also drawn into it, hypnotized by the campaign, by people being nice to her, by the applause when she did her little sideshow. But when Dad showed up on Parents' Day, I had a moment of joy, then I shrank into terror and embarrassment. Terror sounds worse than embarrassment, but for me, terror and embarrassment were equal. Perhaps for any 11-year-old, terror and embarrassment are hard to tell apart. The epicenter of the terror was that Dad was changing and wouldn't be able to change back, so I would lose him. And also that any change this drastic must be dangerous. The epicenter of the embarrassment was that he was still part of me. My father's face was me as much as mine was his. But now he was beyond control. I had some control. Mom and Grandma had some. His getting dressed in his gray suits to go to his everyday job had some. Now he was radioactive. Now he was careering around, exposing us to everyone in town, to everyone in the whole state. Perhaps you think this is oversensitive. Here are plain facts. Dad arrives. Parents and campers go on a tour of our activities. Dad naturally starts up a flirtatious conversation with the prettiest mother, parent of a nerdy junior named Bosie Fuller. Nerdy Jr. becomes visibly nervous. Nora and I are simply exasperated, as usual. The pretty mother is amused, but oddly amused, as Bosie is oddly nervous. Dad is combining flirtation with campaigning and asks the pretty mother where she lives. She says, Culpeper, delicate Virginia voice. Dad says, oh, good, you vote in my district. Pretty mother says, I don't know why you assume that's good. Dad laughs, a smug laugh that I could tell, that anyone could tell, means, little lady, I like your spunk, but 5 more minutes and you'll be mine. The pretty mother adds, and I don't know why you refer to it as your district. Dad laughs again, even more pleased with what he takes to be spunky teasing. The pretty mother goes on, it's Congressman Fenton's district, has been for 6 terms. Up for grabs now, Dad says cheerily. The pretty mother says, and before that, oh, I can't believe you remember much before that, Dad says, unless you were a very precocious child. Before that, we had perfectly nice conservatives, never a carpetbagger with a Yankee accent who's against school prayer. No, I'm all for school prayer, Dad said with more careful cheerfulness, just not state-imposed prayer. You know, you have a truly beautiful voice. I'd love to hear you say, Reardon is right about tax reform. But then I'd be telling a story, the pretty mother said, and my daddy raised me never to tell stories. Well, good. I like a father who, and my daddy is Congressman Fenton, the pretty mother said, and took her daughter by the hand and stepped out of range. Dad opened his mouth and took a step himself, but Nora took hold of his wrist. So for the rest of the camp, I had to know that Bosie Fuller was Congressman Fenton's granddaughter, and she got to know that my father had made a fool of himself. Dad didn't do anything unusually idiotic for a while. He was, of course, the first parent to shoot a bow and arrow at the archery range, the first one to nibble a leaf of sheep sorrel that the counselor in charge of the nature walk said was edible, that sort of stuff. And after lunch, he went into the kitchen and thanked the cooks and thanked the kitchen staff and shook all their hands. He didn't make me go in with him, but standing by the double swinging doors, I could hear him easily over the clatter of silverware and lunch trays. But at the parent campers softball game, he revved up again. Mrs. Fuller was playing first base on the other team. Bosie was playing right field, safely out of the way until she got her chance to pitch. All the campers got to take one turn at pitching. Dad's first time at bat, facing another father, he sliced the ball into right field where it bounced once and spun sideways into the deep grass. Bosie couldn't find it for a while, so her mother ran out to help. Dad trotted all the way around the bases, but the umpire, one of the counselors, said it was a ground rule double. Dad sold third, but the umpire said there was no stealing. She'd explained that twice. When it was Bosie's turn to pitch, it was Dad's second time at bat. Dad tapped his bat on the plate, pointed it at Mrs. Fuller, and smiled. But what he did was very carefully hit a little pop-up to Bosie. I could tell, anyone could tell, he did it on purpose. She was petrified, but it was right to her, and she caught it, smothering it against her chest with her glove and bare hand. That would have been okay. It would have been nice. But just in case anyone missed what he'd done, he made a big deal of it. Atta girl, he yelled. Wait, a nice catch. He kept on down the base path toward first, where Bosie's mother was cheering too. Dad said to her in his remarks to be overheard voice, a vest pocket catch, the trademark of Rabbit Moranville on the old Boston Braves. Before your time, Mrs. Fuller. Bosie, excited by her catch and very likely flustered by Dad's continuing to trot to first, winged the ball toward her mother. Mrs. Fuller stepped forward to catch it, but it hit Dad on the back of his head. The bump made Dad hunch forward. Mrs. Fuller's glove curled around Dad's neck. Her right hand clutched Dad's arm. Dad lurched and fell to his knees. She plopped backward onto her butt, and Dad kept on falling. He put his hands on the ground to keep from crushing Mrs. Fuller, but he ended up on top of her, his knees between her splayed legs. Briefly, but unmistakably, in what the counselors later identified as the missionary position. They didn't tell us campers that, of course, that phrase reached us through the grapevine, counselors to junior counselors to campers. One of the girls in my cabin filled us in after lights out, but before our junior counselor came to bed. The JCs spent this half hour behind the boathouse learning to smoke. The complete phrase reported by my cabin mate was a 3-point landing in the missionary position. Everyone laughed. I don't think most of the cabin knew what missionary position meant any more than I did. They laughed because just bringing up the subject of Dad on top of Mrs. Fuller was funny, even for the umpteenth time. But the girl telling the story was not satisfied. She asked the girl in the bunk next to her if she knew what it meant. The girl said, not exactly. The story said, Edith, you tell her. I could have said, I don't want to talk about my father, or I could have gone hog wild and said, the reason my father fell down is because he was wounded in Vietnam, and talking about it reminds me of that, so it's not funny. I had no objection to lying. I just wasn't strong enough or quick enough, so I ended up desperately guessing. I said, well, it's like praying. You fall down on your knees, and that's like praying, because that's what missionaries do. They're always praying. The girl on the lower bunk of our double-decker bought it. I actually heard her say, oh. And for a second, I was home free. But then the storyteller laughed brilliantly. Some of the other girls joined in, and she said, praying. Yeah, right, praying. I guess you think they're praying when they do it. Everyone laughed, and the storyteller said, hey, no wonder your dad's against school prayer. And everyone kept on laughing, some because sex is always good for a laugh, other because they were glad they weren't me. The problem with top girls is that they are actually often witty. They can be bitches who cut your heart out and serve the pieces to the rest of the gang, but every so often they're really wickedly funny, and everyone laughs and laughs while you lie on top of your bed, lashed down by thick ropes of embarrassment. Later, when I learned about the half-life of radioactivity, I had no trouble with the concept. I had already figured out that some embarrassing moments, however excruciating at the time, lose their power within a few years. But all the embarrassment that I felt for Dad that year, that I felt because of Dad, from the time he sang the Star-Spangled Banner to Dad's day at camp, they all have the half-life of plutonium. Well, we're rolling along here. Yeah, we're on page 336. That's speed reading. I'll try not to have anything funny in this, because this is getting very serious. I did get to campaign after all. This is Edith again. Grandma arranged a fundraising tea for Dad at a friend's house near Warrenton. She had lots of reasons, but I think her chief motive was to make Mom and Dad and Nora and me behave like a family one last time. Once, when she was making one of the big cousins behave, he said to her, do you want me to pretend to be good? And she said, that would be a start. So Mom and Dad and Nora and I all got dressed up and drove to Warrenton, much smaller than Charlottesville, but even fancier horse country, grander estates, and much closer to Washington, and therefore more populated with rich people interested in politics and politicians interested in rich people. Grandma knew lots of both, no surprise, but she also knew a half-dozen newspaper people of an elder statesman sort, Joe and Stuart Alsop, for example. Either Grandma or Dad banished Jerry Medina and Bonnie too. And I actually heard Grandma say to Dad, Mike, dear, one thing I do ask, you will not drive up in that campaign van of yours. Okay, Dad said, can I borrow your Jeep? May, Grandma said. No, you may not. Surely you can find some perfectly normal car this once. Grandma was a benevolent despot to the rest of us too. Nora and I went shopping, whether in Washington. She had lots of stops to make, but the friend whose house she was using for the tea party sent a car and driver to pick us up, take us to Washington, go to 3 stores and a dozen houses. Sometimes we went in and sat still in living rooms, too splendid to play in, while Grandma got down to business. I'll say this for her, she knew how to keep it short. She would cry out, Ella, darling, kiss and hug, introduce us, make her pitch for Ella, darling, to show up in Warrenton and have us back in the car in 10 minutes. You were angels, she said to us each time. And at last she said, you've been perfect to angels, just one more stop. We drove to a building next to the Capitol and went into a congressman's office. We waited a long time. Finally, the congressman came out, much older than Dad. Grandma did the usual, Peter, darling, the hug and a kiss introduced us. But this time we got ditched in the anteroom with the secretary. She gave us Cokes, but I would have liked to see more of the congressman. I wanted to see what Dad might be like if he won. The congressman came out again with Grandma. Nora spoke first. She said, "I've been campaigning with my father. I sang his campaign song solo." "Yes, dear," Grandma said, "but I'm afraid there's..." Nora said, "Do you have a campaign song?" Nora was playing about 2 years younger than her age, and I was glad to see the congressman didn't buy it. He ignored Nora and said to Grandma, "I can't believe you have grandchildren." He kissed her on the cheek and was gone. We got back in the car. Grandma took off her hat and rubbed her head. "I'm glad that's over," she said. "Now we'll all be very still and take a nap." She fell asleep before we were out of the city. Nora and I leaned forward and looked at each other across Grandma's lap. I was glad to see that Nora felt as strange and shy as I did. Nora carefully took Grandma's hat out of her hands and set it on the ledge by the rear window. What was strange was that Grandma had looked bright and strong all day, and then just as we got to the car, she became old. But the Sunday of her tea party, Grandma was powerful again. In the morning, Mom and Nora and I rode to Warrenton with her in the same borrowed car. Grandma gave us a quiz just before the car got to Warrenton. "Edith, what is the name of your hostess?" I said, and Nora, what is the name of your host? I thought Nora's question was unfair. All Nora had to do was say Mr. instead of Mrs., but it was a trick question. He had been an ambassador, so you had to call him that. "How do you do, Mr. Ambassador?" Nora said, "What's his real name?" Grandma said, "Albert, but only your mother and I will call him that." Grandma turned to Mom. "You might start with Mr. Ambassador, and then he'll insist you use his first name. You don't by any chance remember what he gave you for a wedding present?" Mom rolled her eyes. Grandma said to Nora, "And what do you call the congressman you met?" Nora said, "Peter, darling," imitating Grandma's elegant croak. Mom laughed. So did Grandma, but Grandma tapped Nora on the knee with one finger and said, "He would be amused. I would not." The ambassador's house was on top of a hill, and the driveway was very long because it looped back and forth. The house was a Georgian mansion with side wings, all in red brick with a white portico. I still see it from time to time in my dreams. The rhododendrons were past, a few blousy flowers lagged behind, and there were heaps of white petals on the ground. Grandma told Nora and me to play outside. Through the large windows, we could see Grandma and the ambassador's wife go from room to room. They would bustle along, then freeze just inside the doorway, each of them trailing a hand on a door jamb, each jutting her chin as the two of them scanned the room. Once, Grandma said something to the ambassador's wife, who said something to the butler, who said something to the two maids. We were called in to change into our party dresses. The house was much more of a museum than Grandma's. It had more light in the big rooms, although it was darker in the narrow inner hallways. The windows were tall and long, almost up to the ceiling and all the way down to my knees. The glass was old and parts of it crinkled what you could see. Nora and I looked out over the circle of combed white pebbles in front of the house. When Dad pulled up in his normal car, I didn't recognize him. I recognized Ganny first, as tall as Dad and shimmering in the window pane in a red dress that blazed against her brown skin. Nora recognized the other woman. I thought it might be Bonnie too, because she was wearing a red dress like the one Bonnie too had worn. But Nora said it was someone new, Fiona, who was more fun and less goopy, syrupy. Dad looked fine in a crisp blue and white seersucker suit. I'd been afraid he'd be wearing something like he wore to Parents' Day, but of course this was Grandma's party. She came in as Nora and I were about to run down to see Dad. She checked our dresses, put another hairpin in Nora's hair to hold her bow, told us we looked beautiful, and then let us go down. We stopped cold at the edge of the living room. It was already filling with grown-ups in suits and dresses, moving nervously here and there across the rugs and shiny floors, blotting out the clusters of long-stalked flowers, looking occasionally quickly at themselves in the huge mirrors. Even Nora was shy, but as always, less shy than I was. She said to me, "This is better than Grandma's square dance. This is like a play. This is like the one true bridegroom." That was the game Nora and I had played instead of Barbie and Ken, whom Mom and Dad had banned. We got to use Grandpa's old uniform and sword, and a red feather boa for a beard. We must have mixed in pieces of Cinderella, King Arthur, possibly Dracula, and Mom and Dad's wedding album. Neither of us can remember which of us first said "one true bridegroom," but it came to mean that magic power that arranges grown-ups into parades, funerals, and weddings. Nora was right. Grandma's tea party fit. It had more glamour than just a room full of grown-ups. And Dad might fit the part of the one true bridegroom. He had the beard, which even looked red. He looked strong and fit, but he, of course, looked strong and fit at camp. But now he looked ceremonial, as if Grandma had passed her wand over him too. And I knew enough to know that some of the people here would give him money if they thought he had the secret mark of the one true bridegroom. Nora and I went up to Dad, who hugged us both, one arm for each. There was a camera click. Dad introduced us to the ambassador. I mutely held out my paw. The cutie pie Nora said, "Mr. Ambassador," and made a curtsy. Click. More men clustered around and talked. Energy policy, the yawning abyss, Mom called it. The ambassador said something, and the clustered men stopped talking. Dad said to him, addressing him, "I see the ambassador is a secret scientist." It struck me as very odd. Was the ambassador so great and terrible that you couldn't say "you"? And Dad's tone, Dad was plumping pillows for him, Mom's phrase for sucking up. And he was, in Nora's later analysis, praising the ambassador for a minor and secret vanity, the witchcraft way to a person's heart. The ambassador said, "If you want to understand Russia, you're better off knowing energy than Marxism." Dad nodded. The ambassador went on, and Dad nodded some more. When the ambassador was done, Dad said, "Foreign policy and energy. I hope the ambassador is writing something on the subject." The ambassador tilted his head back with pleasure. "Halfway through a book. 4 hours first thing every day. Hardest damn thing I've ever done. Chip Bolin is doing his memoirs, told me to use a tape recorder. Tried it, can't do it. Dictated letters all my life, but fiddling with the machine and talking, I can't do it." Dad said, "Ambassador Bolin is a famous raconteur. Perhaps the writing the ambassador is doing depends more on quantitative analysis." "Yeah, that may have something to do with it. And maps, I've got to put in lots of maps. Most people don't even know where Baku is. But when I used to have to talk to congressional committees, I brought maps because some of them, how's your geography? Good, Dad said, and would have gone on, but Grandma, who was hovering nearby, said, "Maps, he's mad about maps." I couldn't tell if by he she meant Dad or the ambassador. It didn't matter because all she really wanted was to take Dad away to meet the new people. Nora got bored and went out to the flagstone terrace where the buffet table was. But I was fascinated. I followed Dad around. At home, if Mom or I started talking to him, he'd go on with whatever he was doing. Mom and I both used to ask, "Are you listening?" He was, usually, and could answer our questions while continuing to repot his plant or do his crossword. Here at Grandma's tea party, he was staring into the eyes of whoever he talked to. He had lots of different attentive gazes. Years later, when Mom took me to see Les Grands Manœuvres with Gérard Philippe, one scene in it crystallized for me that erotic quicksilver in political campaigns. In Les Grands Manœuvres, Gérard Philippe is a cavalry officer whose regiment is sent to a provincial town. At a reception, Gérard Philippe is playing the piano. He looks up from the keyboard 4 times, each time fixing his exquisitely different gaze on a different woman. But then, when I said something about Dad's gaze to Mom, she refused to get it at first. You mean you think it's like that movie I told you about? Well, look, your father put on a seersucker suit to ask some rich people for money. But then she gazed into her past and said, well, when I first saw Les Grands Marais, I was enchanted. I was in college on a date. Afterwards, I gushed so much about this gorgeous Frenchman that my date told me maybe he was jealous, maybe he was just mean. Anyway, this bozo told me Gerard Philippe is dead. And I burst into tears, a real boo-hoo. Well, served him right, the bozo, I mean. That was of interest, but I tried to explain again about Dad's different attentive looks. I said that room with all the flowers and the light coming through. And then I stopped because I was just worrying to myself about Dad using those looks. And I could see it working. But of course, in the long run, it would make things worse for him. There was this beautiful light in this beautiful house, and for a moment, he might be the one true bridegroom. That it was such a beautiful place and that it seemed to be part of Grandma's spell made it wonderful and then unbearable, because I saw that Dad was getting a magic wish, but that he was using it all up. He was using it all on these people he didn't know, and it was so short. Why do all that? Why do all that when it's just daylilies? And then the same as Mom, after seeing that French movie, I went boo-hoo. Oh, pooch, Mom said, I know. I boo-hooed some more, and then both of us thought it was funny, this genetically transmitted boo-hoo, along with being bad at math, having straight hair, and soft teeth. All right, we're going to really go fast and get to page 511. Is that right? Yeah, this is the Envoy, which is very short. It's 14 years later. Nora is an actress, no surprise. Edith is getting a PhD. Joss and Mike have been long divorced. Mike had a long and very troubling affair with Fiona, who's left him some time past. He stayed, his ex-mother-in-law kept inviting him to come down to the house on the northern neck, and he adores her. And he comes, it is now her 94th birthday, and she's in a wheelchair, and there's been a whole scene. It's actually, and they're very upset about this, and the girls have realized that one of their uncles is going to sell the house in order to put Grandma in a rest home. And all that has gone on, and they're still slightly mad at their father, off and on. So when Mike comes, he stays in the boathouse, which is somewhat out of the way, and so he doesn't have to see a lot of people. But his mother-in-law has made it clear this is his place. Nora and I talked to her, so it's late at night. It's after the big birthday party, and they've all cried a lot. Nora and I talked about all the summers here at Grandma's house. Dad was subdued but attentive, the occasional brightening of his cigar. Oh, Mike didn't win. Spoiled it for you. But he became a local judge, and then he's retired from that. He's getting on, too. A cigar tip signaling where he was anchored. Nora told him she'd come stay with him in August after she finished a job at the movie studio in Wilmington, North Carolina. Dad said, "You can stay in the bungalow. You'll have a little more elbow room." Nora and I made a sympathetic noise. That was as close as we cared to come to saying we were sorry if Fiona was gone. In fact, Dad said, it makes tax sense for you to own the bungalow. I'll give it to both of you. It'll take a couple of years to keep it a non-taxable gift. If you rent it out, I'd like to have a say in who lives there, but you'd get the rent. And of course, if you want to stay just a while, I said, don't you want to have a guest house? Who knows? You might have guests. Maybe you should give us the cottage and you keep the bungalow. No, I use your mother's old studio as a guest room. Each of you should have a place of your own in your hometown. I said before supper, you were saying real estate is just real estate. Did I say that? You were trying to get me to feel better about Mom and the uncle selling the place. Yeah, but I don't think I said that. Anyway, I just thought you might like a little piece of the old homestead. Nora and I said, of course. Nora said, that's great. It is, I said, thank you. Well, good. Nora laughed and said, at least we didn't have to make speeches about how much we love you to get our third of the kingdom. There it was on the table, King Lear, lit for comedy. Yeah, well, Dad said, there ain't much kingdom to divvy up. You just better hope my pension will cover an old age home. Nora said, oh, Dad, cut it out. You have years to go. You're 30 years younger than Grandma. I said, and you still might marry a rich widow. You shouldn't give your old age pensioner speech so often, Nora said. You might slip into the part prematurely. I'm not sure I know that speech. I said, sure you do. Remind me, I said. It's the one about his organs, Nora said. Oh, the old age pensioner organs speech. All right, Dad said. What a shame vaudeville is dead. You two could have replaced Gallagher and Sheen. Dad, I said, you never saw Gallagher and Sheen. That was your father. What is this? You aren't satisfied with old? You're trying for ancient? You think that'll give you a leg up on eternal? Dad laughed hard enough so that his hand holding the cigar made a semaphore motion to the side. Nora laughed too, and I heard for the first time how completely she'd inherited Mom's laugh. And after that, we got sillier, single phrases, even single words set us off. Just to name a subject that one of us might conceivably make a joke about was joke enough. And then we drifted into a pleasant calm. I thought of Mom's bending toward Grandma in a soft rush, of how Mom's love for Grandma comes out as boisterous tenderness the way it did for us when we were young. And I could tell Dad was happy just then. When he spoke, his voice was easy, no more insistent than the creek moving. Nora bubbled up again. She asked Dad to do another heron squawk. It's his minor secret vanities. Birds. But she started laughing before he made a sound. There is an interesting footnote to herons, Dad said. There's an island in the Chesapeake called Wop Island. It's spelled W-O-P. It's on the navigational chart, but it's called that because it's a rookery for black-crowned night herons, and black-crowned nighthorns go whoop. That's what the local watermen say. It's nothing to do with insulting Italians. It's because black-crowned nighthorns go whoop. Now, the great blue heron, Nora and I said, Dad, and started laughing again, gives a longer call, and that's all you two are going to get out of me. And one day you'll want to know, and you'll feel this terrible gap. Oh, all right, I said, just one blue heron squawk. You're such a pushover, Nora said. And I was reminded that Nora was right. It was easier with the two of us here. For a while, we'd suspended the weight of children leaving, of parents declining. On that small screened-in porch of the boathouse, Dad gave into us, and was playing with us as pleasantly as he had when we were very young, before Nora and I came into our first real alarms and sadnesses, the ones that couldn't be coaxed away. Now we found that we buoyed him up. Perhaps that was because we'd learned that by the time you get past the alarms and sadnesses of childhood, there is, even in a life without catastrophe, only a short interval before you feel the first squeeze of perspective toward your vanishing point. But luckily it's possible every now and then to forget that you are moving toward it. It's possible to feel an intimacy that makes a still movement within its rush, creates a chamber out of shared memory and love, in which someone else holds your attention and attends to you. In that fragile chamber, you can keep the ghost you love, not just their rights and wrongs, but the savor of their lives. Thank you.